The smoke still climbed toward the grey sky when they found him. Ash covered the ruins of Ravnsgaard like snow that would never melt. The longhouse had collapsed into itself, its great oak beams reduced to charred skeletons. The livestock pens stood empty, their gates hanging loose. The well had filled with debris and sorrow. Everything that had once been a thriving settlement now lay silent beneath a blanket of devastation. Jarl Eriksson dismounted from his horse with the careful movements of a man approaching sacred ground. Behind him, 20 warriors did the same, their boots crunching. Through the ash-covered earth, they had ridden hard from the northern territories after smoke signals warned of disaster. 3 days of relentless travel, changing horses twice, pushing through autumn storms that turned the forest paths to mud. They had expected to find corpses. They had expected to perform burial rites and speak the names of the dead to the wind. They had not expected to find anyone breathing. The figure lay near what had been the main hall's entrance, half buried beneath a collapsed section of roof. At first, they thought it was just another body among many. The settlement had housed 40 souls before the flames came. But then, one of the younger warriors noticed the shallow rise and fall of the man's chest. "Jarl!" the warrior called, his voice tight with disbelief. "This one lives." They moved quickly then, carefully lifting the blackened timbers away. The man beneath was barely recognizable as human. Burns covered his arms and face, his beard singed away to stubble, his clothing melted into his skin in places that made even hardened warriors wince. His eyes were closed, his breathing so shallow it seemed more memory than life. But he lived. Jarl Eriksson, Jarl, knelt beside him, studying the man's face beneath the soot and injury. Recognition came slowly, like dawn through heavy clouds. The broad jaw, the old scar that ran from temple to cheekbone, the particular set of the shoulders even in unconsciousness. "Thorvald," the Jarl breathed. "Thorvald the Silent." The name passed through the gathered men like wind through trees. Thorvald had been a legend even before this, a warrior who had fought in the Great Northern Campaign, who had stood shield to shield with Jarl Eriksson's father a generation ago. He had earned his name not from inability to speak, but from his custom of letting his axe do the talking. When he finally spoke, men listened. He had come to Ravnsgaard 5 years ago, seeking peace after decades of war. He had taken a small farm on the settlement's edge, raised sheep, and kept to himself. Now he lay dying in the ashes of only peace he had ever known. "Get water," Eriksson commanded, "carefully, and send Bjorn back for the healer's pack." They tended to him there in the ruins, knowing he could not survive a journey. As they worked, the Jarl walked through what remained of Ravnsgaard, reading the story written in ash and blood. The attack had been thorough, coordinated. The fields had been burned at the same time as the buildings. The main gate had been barricaded from the outside. This was not a raid. This was an execution. When Eriksson returned to Thorvald's side, the old warrior's eyes had opened. They were grey as storm clouds, and despite the agony he must have felt, they held steady on the Jarl's face. "Who?" Eriksson asked simply. Thorvald's lips moved, but no sound emerged. His throat had been too damaged by smoke and heat. The healer offered water, which Thorvald sipped with obvious difficulty. He tried again, and this time a whisper emerged, rough as stone grinding against stone. But before he could speak his truth, his eyes rolled back, and consciousness left him again. The Jarl stood slowly, looking at the ruins stretching in every direction. Somewhere in this kingdom, someone had ordered this. Someone had sent men to murder farmers and shepherds, to burn children in their beds. And Thorvald knew who. "We carry him back," Eriksson said carefully. "Build a litter. He will speak his truth before the council, or we will have no justice for these dead. Before we continue this journey, subscribe to the channel and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your strength keeps these legends alive." They worked through the afternoon, building a sturdy litter, As the sun began its descent, painting the smoke-filled sky in shades of copper and blood, they lifted Thorvald onto the litter with the care one might give precious cargo. Before they left, Eriksson ordered stakes driven into the ground at Ravnsgaard's perimeter. Upon each stake, they hung a strip of white cloth. In the old way, this marked the site as sacred ground, a place where blood had been unjustly spilled. The dead still waited for their names to be avenged. The journey back to Bjornheim took 5 days instead of 3. They moved slowly, stopping frequently to check on Thorvald, to change his bandages, to dribble water between his cracked lips. Twice he woke briefly, his eyes searching the faces around him as if looking for someone who was not there. On the second night, one of the younger warriors approached the Jarl's fire. "Lord," he said, "why does this matter so much? Settlements burn, raiders come. It is the way of things." Eriksson did not look up from the flames. This was no raid, Halfdan. Raiders take. They steal livestock, grain, people. They do not barricade the gates and burn everything to ash. This was a message, and messages must be answered, or they become permission. Bjornheim rose from the valley like a promise kept in stone. Its walls had stood for 3 generations. The great hall at its center was said to be able to hold 500 warriors when needed. Guard towers marked each corner, and the banners of allied clans flew from the ramparts. They arrived at dawn on the 6th day. Word of their approach had been sent ahead by swift riders, and Jarl Eriksson's wife Ingrid met them at the gates with healers and servants. "How bad?" she asked, not wasting breath on formal greeting. "Bad enough that he lives by will alone," Eriksson replied. "Get him to the healing house. Use whatever you need." They carried Thorvald to a stone building near the great hall. Here the settlement's healers worked their craft. Astrid, the chief healer, was a woman of 60 winters who had learned her craft from her grandmother. She took one look at Thorvald and immediately began barking orders. "Can you save him?" Eriksson asked. Astrid did not pause in her work. "The body, perhaps. Whether the man survives with it is between him and the gods." She glanced up briefly. "Why? What makes this burned farmer so important?" "He is no farmer," the Jarl said quietly. "He is Thorvald the Silent, shield brother to my father, and he knows who burned Ravnsgaard." The healer's hands stilled for just a moment. "Then I suppose we had better keep him breathing." As the healers worked, Eriksson called an emergency council session. Runners were sent throughout Bjornheim and to the nearest allied settlements. By tradition, the council could only make binding decisions when at least 7 of the 9 jarls and chieftains were present. The messengers carried sealed letters marked with Eriksson's seal. The message was simple. A massacre had occurred, a witness survived, and justice would be demanded. Attendance was not requested. It was required. While they waited, life in Bjornheim continued around the unspoken tension. Children played in the streets. Merchants sold fish and bread. The blacksmith's hammer rang out its steady rhythm. But in the great hall, in the healing house, in the private chambers where the powerful gathered, conversations took on a sharper edge. Rumors spread like morning mist. Some said Ravnsgaard had been destroyed by raiders from across the sea. Others whispered of internal feuds, of old grudges finally paid in blood. Everyone had questions. No one had answers. Eriksson visited Thorvald twice daily. The warrior's body was fighting hard. Some burns had begun to heal. Others had darkened. His breathing remained steady but shallow. On the 3rd day, Thorvald's eyes opened. They were clearer now, more present. "Water," Thorvald whispered. Astrid brought it immediately. He managed several sips before falling back exhausted. "Can you speak?" Eriksson asked. "Yes." The word was barely audible. "But not yet. Not until the council is gathered," Eriksson finished. "I understand. Rest. You have time." The jarls and chieftains began arriving. First came Sigurd of Stoneholm, whose wealth came from quarries. Next arrived Astrid Ironhand, who ruled the coastal settlements. Third came Ulfar the Grey, the youngest of the jarls, only 30 winters. By the 7th day, 7 of the 9 had arrived. Eriksson declared this sufficient. The council was called to convene at Sunset. The great hall had been prepared according to tradition. Fresh rushes covered the floor. Torches burned in iron sconces. The council table was circular, carved from a single enormous oak. Each jarl and chieftain had their place marked by their banner. As the sun touched the western horizon, the leaders of the northern territories took their seats. Eriksson stood. "You know why you are here. Ravnsgaard is gone. 40 souls, including 12 children, burned alive or cut down fleeing the flames. One survivor was found." He gestured to one of his warriors who brought forward items, recovered from Ravnsgaard's ruins. A sword, its blade melted by heat. A child's wooden toy, charred but recognizable, a portion of the barricade that had been placed across the main gate. The gates were sealed from outside, Eriksson continued. The fields burned simultaneously with the buildings. This was planned, organized. Astrid Ironhand leaned forward. "You are saying this was not war, but murder. I am saying that someone wanted Ravnsgaard erased, and our surviving witness knows who gave that order." Silence filled the hall like water rising. "Who is this witness?" Ulfar asked. "Thorvald Eriksson. My father's shield brother, the man who held the line at Grimstead when all seemed lost." "And you believe he will name someone in this room?" "I believe he will name those responsible. Whether that name sits in this room or elsewhere, we will hear truth tonight." They brought Thorvald to the council on a litter, carried by 4 strong men. Astrid walked beside him, monitoring his pulse, ready to intervene. The great hall fell silent as they entered, every eye fixed on the figure wrapped in clean linen bandages. They set the litter beside the council table, positioning it so Thorvald could see the assembled leaders without straining. Jarl Eriksson remained standing. "Thorvald Eriksson, called the Silent, do you hear me?" For a long moment, nothing. Then Thorvald's eyes opened, those grey storm cloud eyes. His gaze travelled slowly around the circle of faces. "I hear," he rasped. "You are before the Council of the Northern Territories. You stand here as the sole survivor of Ravnsgaard's destruction. Will you speak truth before these assembled lords and the gods who listen?" "I will." "Then tell us, who destroyed Ravnsgaard?" Thorvald's chest rose and fell as he gathered strength. "I must begin before the fire. To make sense of what was done, you must understand why." Eriksson nodded. "Then begin where you must." Thorvald spoke, and his words painted pictures in the minds of those who listened. 5 years ago, I came to Ravnsgaard seeking peace. I was tired of war. I took a small farm, raised sheep, kept to myself. The people there knew my name, knew my past, but they let me be." He paused, and Astrid helped him drink before continuing. 2 years ago, a young man came to Ravnsgaard. His name was Leif. He said he was a trader. He was pleasant, well-spoken. He had money to spend and stories to tell. People liked him. Pain crossed Thorvald's face. He stayed at the settlement for 3 weeks that first time, and during those weeks he asked questions, careful questions, about who led the settlement, about defenses, about how many fighting men lived there. "A spy," Astrid Ironhand said flatly. "I thought so, but when I warned the settlement's elder, he laughed, said I was seeing enemies in shadows, said Ravnsgaard was too small, too remote to interest anyone." Another pause, another gathering of breath. Leif came back 3 more times over the next 2 years. Each time he stayed longer, each time he asked more questions, and each time I watched him, because something felt wrong. "Did you discover who he served?" Eriksson asked. "Yes," the word hung in the air. 6 months ago, I followed him when he left. Ravnsgaard tracked him north through the forest, 3 days' travel, and he reached a hunting lodge in the hills. Thorvald's eyes hardened. The lodge flew a banner, a white bear on a blue field. Every person at the council table went rigid. That banner was known to all of them. The banner of a white bear on a blue field belonged to Lord Halvard of Frostmere, and Lord Halvard of Frostmere sat at this very council. Lord Halvard had been silent throughout the council meeting, as was his custom. He was a man of perhaps 50 winters, tall and lean, with a face that gave away nothing. He had ruled Frostmere for 20 years. His territory was prosperous but isolated. He was considered a fair ruler, perhaps stern, but fair. And now Thorvald the Silent had named him. Halvard did not flinch when the accusation landed. He sat perfectly still, waiting. Eriksson broke the silence. "Lord Halvard, you have heard the testimony. What say you?" Halvard stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice was steady. "I say that Thorvald speaks truth about the banner. The lodge he describes is indeed mine, and I say that a man named Leif did serve in my household for several years." The admission sent ripples of shock through the assembled leaders. "However," Halvard continued, "I did not order Ravnsgaard destroyed. I had no reason to. I gained nothing from its burning, and I would not slaughter farmers and children for any purpose. Yet your man was there," Astrid Ironhand said, "asking and questions, gathering information. My man was a trader. I sent him to various settlements to assess opportunities for trade. This is what any prudent lord does. It is not spying, it is commerce." "And when did Leif last report to you?" Eriksson asked. Something flickered across Halvard's face. 8 months ago. He came to Frostmere in late winter, delivered his final reports, collected his wages and departed. He said he was tired of traveling. I wished him well and have not seen him since. "You dismissed him?" "He asked to leave my service. I granted his request." Thorvald made a sound. Then something between a laugh and a cough. Blood flecked his lips. "May I speak?" Thorvald's voice was weaker now. "Speak," Eriksson commanded. "Leif did not leave service. He was dismissed. I learned this from one of Halvard's own guards. The guard said Leif had been dismissed in disgrace, that he had been found with Halvard's wife." The accusation dropped into the hall like a stone into still water. Halvard's face went white, then red. "You speak of things you do not understand," Halvard said, his voice no longer steady. "I speak of motive," Thorvald replied. "A man dismissed in disgrace. A man who knew all your secrets. Such a man might sell what he knows to enemies, or such a man might be paid by you to ensure his silence permanently. This is speculation. You have no proof." "I have ashes," Thorvald said quietly. "I have 40 dead. I have a settlement erased from the earth, and I have your man's footprints leading to your door." "Enough," Eriksson commanded. "Lord Halvard, you will remain in Bjornheim under guard while this matter is investigated. You will surrender your weapons." "You cannot." "I can and I do. This council has authority to detain any member under suspicion of grave crimes." Halvard's hand moved toward his sword. For a heartbeat, violence trembled in the air. Then he slowly unbuckled the weapon and laid it on the table. "I submit to the council's judgment," he said, "but I maintain my innocence. I did not order Ravnsgaard destroyed." Guards stepped forward, surrounding Halvard. At the doorway, he turned back to look at Thorvald. "I honor you, old warrior. You were my father's friend. Whatever you believe you saw, know that I would not betray that friendship. Someone wants you to believe I did this, but I did not." Then he was gone, escorted to chambers that would serve as both accommodation and prison. The remaining council members sat in heavy silence. "What now?" Sigurd asked. "We have accusations, but no proof." Eriksson turned to Thorvald. "Is there more? Anything else that might guide us?" Thorvald's eyes had closed. His breathing had become labored. Astrid checked his pulse and shook her head. "He needs rest," she said firmly. "He has given all he can for now." "Then we adjourn until morning," Eriksson declared. "As fate turns against our hero, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's see how far these voices can travel." Night settled over Bjornheim like a heavy cloak. In their quarters, the council members lay sleepless, turning over what they had heard. Guards walked the walls with heightened alertness. Eriksson could not sleep. He walked the perimeter of his hall, thinking through everything he knew about Halvard. Something was missing. Some piece that would make sense of the whole. His wife found him standing by the window. "You should rest," Ingrid said. "I should solve this before it splits the council." "Do you believe Halvard capable of such an act?" Eriksson was silent for a long moment. "Halvard has always been measured, careful. This feels different, messier, more emotional. The story about his wife, if it is true, it would explain much. But Halvard's wife died 3 years ago. If there was an affair, if Leif was dismissed, it happened long before Ravnsgaard burned. Then why wait?" Eriksson muttered. If Hallvard wanted life silenced, why wait 2 years and then destroy an entire settlement? Perhaps, Ingrid said carefully, because killing life alone would point directly at Hallvard. But destroying Ravnsgaard could be blamed on raiders. No one would. Look for a specific target among so many dead. The logic turned Eriksson's stomach. Elsewhere, Sigurd of Stoneholm met quietly with Astrid Ironhand. Your daughter is promised to Hallvard's son, Astrid said. This threatens that alliance. I will not shield a murderer for a marriage contract. If he is guilty, the contract is void. And if he is innocent, then we must prove it quickly. In another chamber, Ulfar the Grey was writing by candlelight. But as he wrote, his mind kept returning to something Thorvald had said, about Leif asking questions about defenses. Those were not the questions of a merchant, unless Leif had been working not for Hallvard, but for someone else entirely. In the healing house, Thorvald woke briefly. Pain had brought him back despite the medicine. Rest, Astrid urged. You need to heal. No time, Thorvald whispered. Something I must tell before they kill me. Astrid went still. No one is going to kill you. Hallvard is not the only one involved. What do you mean? But pain overwhelmed him before he could answer. His body convulsed. Astrid worked quickly, preparing stronger medicine. When the spasm passed, Thorvald lay barely breathing. Outside, the moon climbed higher. In the guest quarters where Hallvard was confined, the Lord sat by his window, looking out at the same moon. His face was unreadable, but his hands gripped the window frame until his knuckles went white. In the shadows below, a figure moved, quick, purposeful. It slipped between buildings like smoke, avoiding the torchlight, keeping to the darkness. It moved toward the healing house. The guard at the healing house door never heard the blade that opened his throat. He fell silently, his body caught and lowered gently to the ground. The figure stepped over him and entered. Inside, Astrid had finally dozed in her chair beside Thorvald's bed, exhausted from days of constant vigilance. She did not hear the soft footsteps, did not see the shadow fall across her patient. The figure stood over Thorvald, a blade gleaming dully in the low firelight. It raised the weapon, and Thorvald's eyes opened. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other, the assassin and the dying warrior. Then Thorvald's hand shot out with speed that belied his injuries, grabbing the assassin's wrist. "Astrid!" he rasped. "Wake!" The healer jerked awake, saw the scene before her, and screamed. The sound tore through the night like a blade. The assassin tried to pull away, but Thorvald's grip held with desperate strength. They struggled, the blade wavering between them. Then the door burst open and guards flooded in, drawn by Astrid's scream. The assassin released the blade and bolted, shoving past the guards with surprising strength. They gave chase, their shouts echoing through Bjornheim's streets. More guards joined the pursuit. The assassin ran like hunted prey, knowing every corner, every shadow, but there was nowhere to go. Bjornheim was a fortress, and the gates were sealed for the night. The assassin was cornered in the stable yard, surrounded by 20 armed warriors with torches. "Remove your hood," commanded the captain of the guard. Slowly, the assassin complied. The hood fell back. It was a woman, perhaps 40 winters, with dark hair shot through, with grey, and eyes that held no fear, only cold calculation. "Who are you?" the captain demanded. She said nothing. By then Eriksson had arrived, hastily dressed, his sword in hand. He studied the woman's face, searching for recognition. "I know you," he said slowly. "You served in Hallvard's household. You were his wife's handmaid." The woman smiled then, her expression without warmth. "I served the Lady Freya for 20 years. I loved her as if she were my own blood. And you came here to kill Thorvald?" "I came to finish what should have been finished at Ravnsgaard." The admission sent a chill through everyone present. "So it is true," Eriksson said. "Hallvard ordered the attack." "No!" The woman's voice was sharp. "Lord Hallvard ordered nothing. He knew nothing. The burning of Ravnsgaard was mine alone." Silence fell like snow. "Yours?" Eriksson took a step closer. "You destroyed an entire settlement, murdered 40 people. Why?" The woman's face twisted with old grief and fresh rage. "Because of Leif. because of what he did to my lady, because he seduced her, used her, and when she was discovered, she took her own life in shame. Lord Halvard forgave her before she died, but I could not forgive. I would not. So you hunted Leif, Eriksson said, understanding dawning. You found him at Ravnsgaard. It took me 2 years. 2 years of searching, of asking questions, of following whispers and shadows. When I finally found him hiding in that peaceful settlement, living as if he deserved peace after what he had done. Her hands clenched into fists. I hired men, mercenaries from the south who cared nothing for our laws. I paid them well to bring fire and death. You killed 39 innocent people to reach one guilty man. I killed everyone who might have sheltered him. Everyone who let him hide. They were complicit in his cowardice. Eriksson shook his head slowly. You are mad. I am loyal, she corrected. Loyalty to my lady demanded justice, and justice demanded blood. And tonight, you came to kill Thorvald because he spoke the truth. I came to silence him before he revealed more, before he told you what else he saw that night. She looked past Eriksson toward the healing house. But I was too late, wasn't I? He has already spoken. What else did he see? The woman smiled again. That terrible cold smile. Ask him yourself if he lives long enough to tell you. They dragged her away to the cells beneath the great hall. Eriksson returned immediately to the healing house, where Astrid was checking Thorvald's wounds. The struggle had reopened some of his burns. Will he live? Eriksson asked. Perhaps, if infection does not take him, if his heart does not give out from the strain. Astrid looked up. What did she mean? What else did he see? Eriksson turned to Thorvald. The old warrior's eyes were open, watching him. Tell me, Eriksson said. What else? Thorvald drew a careful breath. The night Ravnsgaard burned, I was at my farm on the edge of the settlement. I saw the fires start. Saw the men with torches. I tried to reach the main hall, to warn people, but he paused, gathering strength. I saw her, the woman. She was there, directing them, but she was not alone. Who else? A man, tall, wearing a cloak with a hood. I never saw his face, but I heard his voice when he spoke to her. He said that once Ravnsgaard was gone, no one would question what happened to the northern trade routes. That settlements would think twice before refusing certain arrangements. Understanding crashed over Eriksson like a wave. This was never just about revenge for Leif. No, Thorvald agreed. The woman wanted Leif dead, but someone else wanted Ravnsgaard destroyed for another reason entirely. They used her grief, used her rage, pointed it like a weapon. Who was the man? I do not know. But I heard something else he said. He told her that when this was done, when the council gathered to investigate, they would blame Halvard. Everything pointed to him. The woman's service in his household, Leif's connection, the banner at the hunting lodge. Halvard would take the fall, and the real purpose would remain hidden. Eriksson felt the ground shifting beneath him. A conspiracy within a conspiracy. Yes, the woman thinks she acted for justice. She does not realize she was used. And now Halvard sits in your cells, accused of a crime he did not commit, while the true architect of Ravnsgaard's destruction remains free. Dawn came cold and grey. Eriksson had not slept. He had spent the night questioning the assassin, trying to learn the identity of her mysterious partner. But she knew nothing useful. She had met him only twice, both times in darkness. He had known about Leif, about her desire for revenge, and he had offered help, money, men, resources. She had been too consumed by grief and rage to question why. Now Eriksson stood before the council, which had reconvened in haste. Halvard had been brought up from his confinement, confusion clear on his face. New evidence has come to light, Eriksson announced. He told them about the assassin, about her confession, about the mysterious man who had used her grief for his own purposes. So Halvard is innocent? Sigurd asked. Of ordering Ravnsgaard's destruction. Yes, Eriksson confirmed, but someone wanted us to believe he was guilty. Someone arranged every piece of evidence to point toward him. Halvard spoke for the first time, his voice hoarse. Then who? Who gains from my downfall? That, Eriksson said, is what we must determine. Thorvald heard the man speak of northern trade routes, of settlements refusing certain arrangements. This suggests someone interested in controlling commerce through intimidation. Ulfar the Grey leaned forward. The northern routes pass through several territories. Who benefits most from controlling them? We all. Trade along those routes, Astrid Ironhand said, but none of us would burn a settlement to control them. Perhaps not those of us in this room, Eriksson agreed. But what of those who are not here? What of the 2 council members who did not attend? Silence fell as everyone considered this. Orm of Blackstone did not come, Sigurd said slowly. He sent word that his territory was dealing with sickness, and Ragnar of Ironwood also declined, claiming his son's wedding required his presence. 2 absences, Ulfar mused. Could be coincidence. Could be something more. Eriksson turned to his captains. Send riders to both territories, fast horses. I want to know exactly what Orm and Ragnar have been doing these past weeks. But before the riders could depart, a messenger arrived at Bjornheim's gates. He was exhausted, his horse lathered with sweat, and he carried urgent news. Jarl Eriksson, the messenger gasped. I come from Stonebridge, a settlement 3 days north of here. 2 nights ago it was attacked. Raiders came with torches. The people barely escaped with their lives. The settlement burns even now. Everyone in the hall went still. Stonebridge, Astrid Ironhand said. That lies along the northern trade route, just like Ravnsgaard. It begins, Eriksson said grimly. Whoever is behind this, they are not stopping with one settlement. They are sending a message up and down the trade route. Submit or burn. Then we must move quickly, Halvard said, stepping forward. If there is to be another attack, if we can anticipate where, we set a trap, Ulfa finished. We find the next likely target and wait for them. Eriksson considered this. Wolfden. It is the next major settlement northward. Prosperous. Strategically located. If I were trying to control the northern routes, that is where I would strike next. How long until we can have warriors in position? 2 days. Maybe less if we ride hard. Then we ride, Halvard said. And we end this, for Ravnsgaard, for Stonebridge, for all the innocent blood that has been spilled. Eriksson looked at him for a long moment. You wish to ride with us, after being accused, imprisoned, nearly condemned. I wish to clear my name beyond any doubt, Halvard replied. And I wish to face the man who tried to destroy me. That seems motivation enough. Eriksson nodded slowly. Then we ride. Together, all of us. The council united as it should be. They rode out within the hour. 50 warriors, the best from each Jarl's household. They left Bjornheim under heavy guard, with instructions that Thorvald was to be protected at all costs. If they failed, if they did not return, the old warrior was the only one who could identify the mysterious man. The journey to Wolfden was hard and fast. They changed horses twice, pushing the pace. Eriksson sent scouts ahead to warn Wolfden's people, to tell them to prepare defenses but to show no unusual activity. They needed the settlement to appear normal, vulnerable, tempting. They arrived at Wolfden in the dead of night on the 2nd day. The settlement's elder met them at the edge of town, his face grim. We received your warning, he said. What would you have us do? Evacuate the women and children to the forest, Eriksson commanded. Keep enough men here to maintain appearances. We will hide our warriors in the buildings closest to the main approach. When the raiders come, we surround them. The plan was set in motion immediately. Families gathered their most precious belongings and slipped away into the darkness. Warriors took up positions, hiding in homes, barns, storage sheds. They waited. 1 night passed, then another. Tension built like a storm about to break. Some wondered if they had guessed wrong, if the raiders would strike elsewhere or not at all. But on the 3rd night, the scouts brought word. A force was approaching. 20 men, maybe more, carrying torches and weapons. They moved with purpose toward Wolfden. Eriksson gave the signal. Every warrior readied their weapon. Every breath slowed. Every heart beat with the rhythm of coming battle. The raiders entered Wolfden cautiously. They spread out, moving toward different buildings, preparing to set fires simultaneously as they had done at Ravnsgaard. They did not know they were walking into a trap. When they were fully committed, when every raider was inside the settlement's perimeter, Eriksson gave the signal. Warriors poured. from the buildings like water breaking through a dam. The raiders found themselves surrounded, trapped in the center of the settlement with nowhere to run. Torches fell from startled hands. Weapons were drawn, but it was already too late. "Drop your weapons!" Eriksson's voice cut through the night. "You are surrounded. Surrender and you will be judged fairly." Some of the raiders complied immediately, throwing down their swords and raising their hands. Others tried to fight. The battle was brief and brutal. These were not professional soldiers, but hired mercenaries, men who fought for coin rather than honor. When their odds turned against them, their courage failed. Within minutes, it was over. 15 raiders captured, 5 dead, 3 escaped into the darkness. Eriksson's warriors had taken them without losing a single man. The prisoners were bound and forced to kneel in Wolfden's central square. Eriksson walked among them, studying their faces. "Who hired you?" he demanded. "Who paid you to burn settlements?" Silence. The men stared at the ground, their faces defiant or afraid, but universally closed. "You will speak," Eriksson said, "or you will hang. Every one of you. At dawn. We don't know names," one man finally said, his voice cracking. "We were hired through intermediaries, given gold and targets, that's all." "Describe the intermediary." "A woman. Dark hair. Older. She met us in a tavern 3 weeks ago." "Not the woman. There was a man. Tall. Wore a hooded. In cloak. Some of you must have seen him." The prisoners exchanged glances. One of them, braver or more foolish than the rest, spoke up. "There was a man. Only saw him once at distance. He met with the woman at the edge of our camp. We weren't supposed to see, but some of us were curious." "What did he look like?" "Tall, like you said. Moved like a warrior, not a merchant. Had a ring on his hand that caught the firelight, silver with some kind of stone. That's all I saw. A ring. It was something, but not enough." Halvard stepped forward. "Did you hear his voice? Anything he said?" The mercenary shook his head. "Too far away. But I'll tell you this, the woman was afraid of him. I could see it in how she stood, how she spoke. She might have thought she was in charge, but he was the one giving orders." Eriksson turned to his captains. "Take them back to Bjornheim. They will stand trial. And send riders to every settlement between here and the coast. Warn them. Tell them to be vigilant." As the prisoners were led away, Astrid Ironhand approached Eriksson. "We have stopped one attack, but we are no closer to identifying the true enemy." "No," Eriksson agreed, "but he knows we are hunting him now. He will make a mistake. They always do." They returned to Bjornheim to find the settlement in chaos. During their absence, 3 more messengers had arrived with reports. 2 more settlements had been attacked, both along the trade routes. One had been destroyed completely. The other had fought off the raiders, but at terrible cost. The pattern was clear now. Someone was systematically destroying or intimidating settlements along the northern trade routes. The goal was control through fear. Eriksson called the council together again, this time including the 2 absent members. Orm of Blackstone had finally arrived, claiming his territory's sickness had passed. Ragnar of Ironwood sent word that he was still delayed but would come as soon as possible. "Convenient," Ulfa muttered. "Ragnar is always delayed when accountability arrives." In the healing house, Thorvald continued his slow recovery. The burns were healing, though they would scar terribly. His voice had grown stronger, his mind clearer. Astrid judged that he would live, though he would never be the warrior he once was. Eriksson visited him that evening, bringing news of the trap at Wolfden. The mercenary mentioned a ring, Eriksson said. "Silver with a stone. Does that mean anything to you?" Thorvald's eyes narrowed in thought. "A ring, yes. The night of the fire, when I heard the hooded man speak. There was a moment when he gestured and his sleeve fell back. I saw his hand. There was a ring, silver with a deep blue stone. Sapphire, perhaps. It was dark, and I was too far away to be certain, but it was distinctive. Large, the kind of thing a wealthy man would wear. Or a jarl," Eriksson said quietly. "Or a jarl," Thorvald agreed. Eriksson stood and paced the small room. "We have 9 jarls in the council. I have known most of them for years, some since childhood. The idea that one of them could do this. Power changes men," Thorvald said. "I have seen it 1,000 times. A good man gains power, and slowly, so slowly he does not notice, he becomes someone else. Someone who believes the rules do not apply to him. Someone who sees people as obstacles rather than souls. But which one? Orm? Ragnar? Someone else? Look for motive, Thorvald advised. Who gains most from controlling the northern routes? Who has been positioning themselves for greater power? Who has debts they need to pay? Or ambitions they need to feed? Eriksson left the healing house with more questions than answers. He returned to his private chambers where Ingrid waited. "You look troubled," she said. "I am hunting a shadow," he replied. "A man who moves in darkness, who hires others to do his bloody work, who hides behind innocent faces." "Then stop looking for the man," Ingrid said. "Look for the benefit. Who profits from all this death?" Her words echoed Thorvald's advice. Eriksson spread a map across his table, marking each attacked settlement with a stone. Ravnsgaard, Stonebridge, Wolfden, the two others that had burned while they set their trap. He traced the trade routes with his finger, all the settlements connected, forming a line that stretched from the inland territories to the coast. Goods flowed along this line: furs, timber, iron, grain. Whoever controlled these settlements controlled the commerce, but who would benefit most? He studied the territories of each council member. Sigurd's quarries fed into the trade routes but did not depend on them. Astrid Ironhand's coastal holdings were the end point, not the middle. Ulfar's forest territories bordered the routes but remained largely independent. Then he looked at Orm's lands. Blackstone territory sat at a key juncture where three trade routes converged. If someone wanted to control the flow of goods, that would be the place to do it. But Orm was wealthy already. Why would he need more, unless he was not wealthy anymore? Eriksson recalled hearing rumors, whispers really, about Orm spending lavishly in recent years, building a new hall, hosting elaborate feasts, maintaining a household guard twice the size he needed. Such spending required steady income. What if that income had dried up? What if Orm was drowning in debt? A man drowning might do anything to save himself. Eriksson called for his most trusted scout. "I need you to ride to Blackstone. Quietly. Do not let Orm know you are there. Talk to merchants, innkeepers, servants. I want to know everything about Orm's finances, his debts, his spending, his vulnerabilities." The scout left immediately. Eriksson tried to sleep but could not. He kept seeing the pattern in his mind, the pieces falling into place. If Orm was behind this, if he had been burning settlements to intimidate others into paying his tolls, into bending to his control. But there was still the matter of the ring. Did Orm wear such a ring? Eriksson could not remember. He had never paid attention to such details. 3 days later, the scout returned with information that made everything clear. Orm of Blackstone was indeed in financial trouble. Deep trouble. He had borrowed heavily from merchants across the territory to fund his building projects. The debts had come due, and he could not pay. But there was more. The scout had spoken to a silversmith in a village near Blackstone. 2 months ago, Orm had commissioned a ring, silver with a large sapphire. The silversmith remembered because Orm had insisted it be made quickly and had paid double the normal price. A ring made 2 months ago. Shortly before the attacks began, Eriksson felt the weight of certainty settle over him. He had found his man. Eriksson moved carefully. Orm was still in Bjornheim, attending the council sessions, his face showing nothing but concern for the crisis affecting their territories. If he suspected that Eriksson knew the truth, he gave no sign. But Eriksson needed more than suspicion. He needed proof that would convince the council, that would justify the punishment such crimes demanded. He needed Orm to reveal himself. He called a private council meeting, excluding Orm. When the other Jarls gathered, he laid out what he had discovered: the financial troubles, the commissioned ring, the pattern of attacks that would benefit Blackstone above all others. "It fits," Halvard said grimly, "but will it be enough to convict him?" "No," Astrid Ironhand said. "We need confession or witness testimony. We need him to incriminate himself. Then we give him the opportunity." Eriksson said. "We tell him we have captured the hooded man. We let him think the threat is over, that he is safe, and we watch him make his final mistake." They set the trap carefully. That evening, Eriksson announced to the full council that riders had captured a suspicious figure near one of the burned settlements, a tall man wearing a hooded cloak, carrying gold and maps of the trade routes. He was being brought to Bjornheim for questioning. "Finally!" Sigurd said with genuine relief. "Finally, we will have answers." Eriksson watched Orm's face as he made the announcement. For just an instant, something flickered there. Fear, calculation. It passed so quickly that anyone not looking for it would have missed it. "When will he arrive?" Orm asked, his voice casual. "Tomorrow evening," Eriksson replied. "We will question him before the full council." That night, Eriksson positioned guards throughout Bjornheim. Not obvious. Patrols, but hidden watchers. He told them to pay special attention to Orm's chambers and the main gates. The trap was set. Now they waited to see if Orm would take the bait. The answer came at midnight. One of the hidden guards brought word that Orm had left his chambers, moving quietly through the settlement. He was heading toward the stables. Eriksson gathered Hallvard, Ulfar, and a dozen trusted warriors. They followed at a distance, letting Orm believe he was unobserved. He saddled his horse himself, working quickly, glancing around constantly. Then he rode out through a small side gate that was supposed to be locked, but somehow stood open. They let him get a quarter-mile from Bjornheim before they closed in. Warriors emerged from the darkness on all sides, blocking his path. Orm wheeled his horse, looking for an escape, but there was none. "Going somewhere, Lord Orm?" Eriksson called out. Orm's hand went to his sword, but he was surrounded by 20 armed warriors. Drawing it would be suicide. His shoulders slumped. "You know," he said. It was not a question. "I know," Eriksson confirmed. "The ring, the debts, the attacks, all of it. Then I suppose there is no point in denying it." Orm dismounted slowly, his movements heavy with defeat. "How did you discover the truth? You made mistakes. You always were careless with details." Orm laughed bitterly. "Careless? Yes, I should have killed Thorvald myself when I had the chance, but I left it to the woman and she bungled it." "Why?" Eriksson asked. "Why destroy innocent settlements? Why murder children?" "Because I was drowning." Orm's composure cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "Do you know what it is like to watch everything you have built crumble? To owe money to every merchant from here to the coast? I needed control of the trade routes, needed the income they would generate. The attacks were meant to intimidate the settlements into accepting my authority, my tolls, my oversight. So you hired the woman, used her grief over Leif. She was perfect, already consumed by revenge, already willing to burn anything in her path. I simply pointed her in the right direction and provided resources, and when suspicion arose, everything pointed to Hallvard. It was elegant. It was evil, Hallvard said, his voice cold as winter ice. "It was survival," Orm shot back. "You all sit comfortable in your territories with your full coffers and your easy judgments. You do not understand what it is like to fall, to know that everything you have built is slipping away. So you murdered 40 people in Ravnsgaard," Eriksson said. "And how many others in the settlements that followed? 50, 60? Orm said nothing. His face had gone pale as he realized the full weight of his crimes laid out before him. "You will face judgment before the council," Eriksson said, "and you will face justice under the laws you yourself helped write." They brought Orm back to Bjornheim in chains. By dawn, the entire settlement knew what had happened. The council reconvened, this time with all the evidence laid bare. The financial records, the silversmith's testimony, Orm's own confession spoken in the darkness. The judgment was swift and unanimous. For the crime of mass murder, for the betrayal of his oath to the council, for the destruction of innocent settlements, Orm of Blackstone was sentenced to death. He was executed the following morning, not as a warrior with honor, but as a criminal. His lands were forfeit, to be distributed among the survivors of the settlements he had destroyed. His name would be struck from the records of nobility. His sons would carry the shame of his crimes for generations. As Orm's body was carried away, Eriksson felt no satisfaction, only exhaustion and sorrow. So much death, so much pain, all because one man could not bear the thought of losing his wealth. 3 weeks after Orm's execution, Eriksson returned to Ravnsgaard. The white cloths still hung from the stakes he had driven into the ground, now tattered by wind and rain. The ruins remained untouched, a monument to what had been lost, but he had not come alone. Behind him, a caravan of wagons carried supplies, timber, tools, seed, and people. Survivors from the other attacked settlements who had nowhere else to go. Craftsmen and farmers willing to rebuild. Families seeking a fresh start. Thorvald was there too, riding in a cart because he could not yet sit a horse comfortably. His burns had healed into thick scars, and he would never again be the warrior he once was. But he was alive, and he had insisted on coming. "This is where it ended," Thorvald said, looking out over the ruins. "This should be where it begins again." They spent the first day clearing away the worst of the debris, sorting through the ashes for anything worth saving. They found little, the fire had been too thorough, but they found enough. A cooking pot, badly scorched, but still usable. A child's toy that had somehow survived. Small things that spoke of lives lived before the flames came. On the second day, they began laying foundations for new buildings. The work went quickly with so many hands. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air where there had been only silence. Children played in the cleared spaces, their laughter a defiant answer to all the death this place had seen. Eriksson worked alongside the others, his hands blistering as he helped raise beams for a new longhouse. This one would be larger, stronger, built to last generations. It would be a symbol that evil could burn but could not erase, that communities could be destroyed but would rise again. On the evening of the 5th day, as the sun set in shades of amber and gold, the survivors gathered in the partially built longhouse. They stood in a circle, 50 souls where 40 had died, and they spoke the names of the lost aloud. Each name was honored, each life remembered. When the last name had been spoken, Thorvald stepped forward. His voice was still rough, still marked by the smoke that had nearly killed him, but it carried clearly in the quiet. "The fire took much from us," he said. "It took lives and homes and peace. It took innocence, but it did not take everything. It did not take our will to rebuild. It did not take our determination to remember, and it did not take our ability to hope." He paused, looking around at the faces illuminated by firelight. "Ravnsgaard will rise again, not as it was, but as it can be, stronger, wiser, more prepared. We will honor the dead by living well, by building something that lasts, by refusing to let fear dictate our futures." Someone started to clap, then another. Soon the longhouse rang with applause, with voices raised in agreement. These were people who had lost everything but had chosen to begin again. They were survivors in the truest sense. After the gathering dispersed, Eriksson found Thorvald standing outside, looking up at the stars. "You could return to Bjornheim," Eriksson said. "You have earned comfort and rest." "I had comfort and rest here once," Thorvald replied. "I would like to find it again. Besides, these people will need someone who knows how to defend a settlement if trouble comes again." "You think it will? Trouble always comes. The question is whether we are ready for it." Thorvald turned to face the Jarl. "Thank you for believing me, for seeking justice, for caring about 40 souls in a settlement most Jarls would not even know existed. It was you who brought justice," Eriksson said. "You survived when you should have died. You spoke when silence would have been easier. You exposed a conspiracy that would have torn the council apart. Then perhaps my surviving had purpose after all." Thorvald smiled, an expression that transformed his scarred face. The gods work in mysterious ways. Over the following weeks, Ravnsgaard grew from ruins into a living settlement once more. Houses rose along new streets, fields were cleared and planted. A new well was dug, deeper and stronger than the old one. Slowly, carefully, Life returned to the place where death had reigned. Thorvald became the settlement's elder, a role he accepted with reluctance, but filled with quiet wisdom. He trained young men and women in defense, not because he expected attack, but because preparedness brought peace. He settled disputes with fairness. He welcomed travelers and told them the story of Ravnsgaard's destruction and rebirth. The story spread. Across the northern territories, people spoke of the settlement that had risen from ashes, of the warrior who had survived to speak truth, of the justice that had been served when a corrupt Jarl fell. And the story carried a message that evil could be challenged, that the powerful could be held accountable, that ordinary people, if they stood together, could rebuild anything that was torn down. Eriksson visited Ravnsgaard once each season, bringing news from the wider world and checking on the settlement's progress. Each time he was amazed at how much had changed, how vibrant the place had become, how the scars of fire were slowly being covered by new growth. On his visit in the settlement's first autumn, as they walked through fields heavy with the first harvest, Eriksson asked Thorvald if he had found the peace he had been seeking all those years ago. Thorvald considered the question carefully. "Not peace," he said finally. "Peace is for those who have nothing left to protect, but I have found purpose, and perhaps that is better." They stood together watching the sun set over Ravnsgaard, painting the new buildings in shades of gold and crimson. Smoke rose from cooking fires, carrying the scent of bread and roasted meat. Children's voices echoed in the distance, speaking of games and laughter and futures yet to come. Orm thought he could erase this place, Eriksson said quietly. Thought he could burn it from existence, and no one would care enough to ask why. He was wrong, Thorvald replied. People always care. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes pain, but the truth finds the light eventually, and justice, when it comes, is worth the wait. If this journey moved you, leave a like, subscribe, and share in the comments what touched you the most. Your voice keeps these legends alive. As darkness settled over the reborn settlement, fires were lit in the longhouse. People gathered to share the evening meal, to tell stories, to strengthen the bonds that held them together. Thorvald sat among them, no longer silent, no longer seeking solitude. He had learned that peace was not found in isolation, but in community, not in forgetting the past, but in building a better future. Outside, the stars emerged one by one, ancient and eternal. They had witnessed the burning of Ravnsgaard. They had watched Thorvald crawl from the ashes. They had seen justice pursued and evil punished. And now they watched life return, stubborn and resilient, refusing to be extinguished. The story of Ravnsgaard would be told for generations. It would become legend, embellished and expanded until fact and myth blurred together. But at its heart would remain this truth, that one man's refusal to die had exposed a conspiracy, saved lives, and proved that even in the darkest times, courage and determination could triumph. Thorvald the Silent had spoken, and his words had changed everything. In the longhouse, someone began to sing. Others joined in, voices blending in harmony. It was an old song, one that spoke of resilience and hope, of communities standing together against darkness. The song rose through the rafters and out into the night, carried on the wind across fields and forests. And in Bjornheim, in Stoneholm, in settlements throughout the northern territories, people heard that song and remembered that justice was possible, that evil could be challenged, that from ashes new life could always grow. This was the legacy of Ravnsgaard, not the destruction it had suffered, but the rebirth it had achieved. Not the death of 40 souls, but the courage of one survivor who refused to let their deaths be meaningless. As Thorvald lay down to sleep that night in his new home, built on old ground, he thought about all he had lost and all he had gained. The pain of his burns had faded to a dull ache. The memories of fire still haunted his dreams, but he was alive, and he had ensured that those who died would be remembered, honored, avenged. That was enough. That was everything. The northern wind whispered through Ravnsgaard's new buildings, carrying with it the promise of winter and the memory of fire. But the settlement stood strong. It would endure, and it would remind all who saw it that hope, once kindled, could never be fully extinguished. The warrior had been found alive among the ashes, and what he said had made the council fall silent, had brought a corrupt lord to justice, had given meaning to senseless death. His truth had set them free, and in freedom they had rebuilt.